I came home 2 weeks early and found my wife asleep on the doormat, wearing rags, while my son-in-law wiped his muddy shoes on her shoulder and told his guests not to worry about the crazy maid. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a punch. I just took one step forward, and the look in my eyes made the music stop, because none of them had any idea who I really was. Before I go further, if you believe families should protect each other and not destroy each other, hit like and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Clifford Dalton. To my neighbors, and even to my own daughter, I'm just a retired truck driver. Calloused hands, worn flannel, 40 years hauling freight across the interstates. What they don't know is that I own the trucking company. I own the logistics firm that bought the trucking company. 2 weeks before that night, I was in Zurich, closing a 9-figure sale of a European shipping subsidiary. I built an empire in the shadows because I wanted to know who loved me for me and who loved me for my wallet. I'd been in Europe 2 months on a merger. I missed my wife, Beatrice, 45 years married, the only person alive who knows the true size of our fortune. She's a simple woman, gardening, knitting, no taste for ostentation. When our daughter Vanessa married Bradley, a man whose ambition was written all over his face, Beatrice and I helped them the way we help everyone we love, quietly. I bought them a Greenwich estate through a blind trust, paid for the renovations, even pulled strings to get Bradley his CFO job, though he believes to this day he earned it alone. All we asked was a place in the guest cottage when we visited, and that they look after Beatrice while I traveled. She'd just had hip surgery. She needed rest. I trusted my daughter. I trusted that even a shark like Bradley had the decency to treat his mother-in-law like a human being. I was wrong. It was a cold, biting November night when my flight landed at JFK. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise her. The Uber wound through Greenwich in the rain, and my gut, which has never once lied to me in 40 years of business, told me something was rotten. The gates were open. The driveway was lined with Mercedes and Porsches. Vanessa hadn't mentioned a party. The house was lit up like Christmas, jazz thumping from inside. I walked up to the front doors, soaked, looking like a vagrant with a duffel bag. And that's when I saw it. A pile of gray rags tucked in the shadows by the door. Then the bundle shivered. It wasn't laundry. It was a person, curled on a thin mat in a uniform 2 sizes too big, hair gone gray and matted, hands cracked from cold. It was Beatrice. Before I could touch her, the door swung open. Laughter, warmth, the smell of scotch and hors d'oeuvres. Bradley stepped out in a tuxedo, flanked by 2 investors, mid-sentence about the spectacular grounds. He looked down at my wife, not surprised, just annoyed. She startled awake, terrified, and stammered, "I'm sorry, sir. I'll clean it up right now, sir." Bradley laughed and told his guests she was their live-in maid, a bit touched in the head, that they kept her around out of charity. Then, he looked at the mud on his shoe, looked at Beatrice, trying to push herself up the wall, and wiped his shoe on her shoulder. "Stand up straight when guests are present, you crazy old hag." That was the moment the old Clifford Dalton died. "That's enough," I said, stepping out of the shadows. Bradley sneered, called me the other charity case, his father-in-law the truck driver. I ignored him, knelt by Beatrice, and she flinched from my hand, mumbling about a basement, begging not to be locked in again. My own wife didn't recognize me. Bradley ordered me to drag her around back to the servants' quarters. I didn't answer. I helped her up, walked straight past him, down the driveway, out the gate, and called an Uber to the St. Regis. In the warmth of that hotel suite, I finally saw what they'd done to her. Skin and bone, bruises up and down her arms, a haunted, skittish look that belonged to a prisoner, not a grandmother. I bathed her, fed her, put her to bed, and sat awake until 3 a.m., when I called Leonard Katz, my attorney for 30 years, the sharpest shark in New York. I told him everything. "I want to destroy him," I said. "The house, the job, the reputation. I want him to have nothing." The next morning, I took Beatrice to Dr. Evans at Mount Sinai. The tox screen came back first. Her blood was saturated with antipsychotics and benzodiazepines at triple the therapeutic dose. Chemical restraints, the kind used to sedate the severely psychotic, given to a healthy elderly woman to manufacture confusion and compliance. She'd lost 30 pounds in 2 months. Healed fractures in her fingers, never set. Pressure sores from being kept immobile. They weren't neglecting her. They were poisoning her. Dismantling her mind so she'd lose legal standing, so she could be quietly committed and controlled. When I called Vanessa, she didn't ask if her mother was alive. She asked if I'd bring her back before Bradley's investors noticed. When I told her about the drugs, she didn't deny it. She justified it. He'd threatened to cut her off, cancel her cards, take the car, if she interfered. My daughter had sold her mother's sanity for a leased Range Rover. I told her not to call me Dad again, and I hung up. Leonard's investigation went deeper. Bradley had forged Beatrice's signature and drained $200,000 from her medical trust. Not for her care, but for a Porsche 911 and a deposit on a house in the Hamptons. Worse, he'd forged a quitclaim deed to fake ownership of the estate and used it as collateral for a $1.5 million loan, which he'd poured into a cryptocurrency scheme that had just collapsed. He was insolvent, drowning, and days from being exposed to the board that was about to name him CEO. Buy every debt he has, I told Leonard. I want to be the only person on earth Bradley owes money to. For 3 days I let him stew. His texts went from threats, I'll cancel her insurance, this is kidnapping, to arrogance, once he decided we'd run off too broke and scared to come back. Don't worry about the house, he wrote. I'll take good care of it now that it's finally mine. He had no idea the ground under him had already been sold out from under him. While Beatrice's body flushed the drugs from her system, 3 brutal days of shaking, sweating, terror, I built the final trap. A retired hedge fund shark named Artie Vance, who owed me a favor from years back, posed as a private investor and offered Bradley $5 million against the deed to his house. Bradley didn't hesitate. He signed an affidavit swearing he owned the estate outright, free and clear. It was bank fraud, federal. 30 years on paper. By Friday, Beatrice was herself again, clear-eyed, sharp, furious. She didn't want to walk back into that house looking like a victim. So I gave her armor, a stylist team, a chestnut bob, a midnight blue velvet gown, and a diamond and sapphire necklace from my vault. I traded my flannel for a bespoke tuxedo and shaved the beard I'd worn like a costume for years. I hired executive protection. I called Marcus Sterling, CEO of Global Tech Solutions, Bradley's boss, and secretly, my employee, since Trident Holdings, which I chair, owns his company. I'm not coming to celebrate, I told him. I'm coming to audit. Bring the termination paperwork. Saturday night, we arrived at the estate in a black Rolls-Royce, engine purring like a warning. Through the open doors, Bradley was mid-toast on the grand staircase, telling his guests a beautiful lie, that he and Vanessa had lovingly cared for her senile parents, that we'd fled into the night, too far gone to accept his charity. Vanessa stood below him, pale, silent, complicit. We stepped into the light. The room went dead silent. A queen in velvet and diamonds, and beside her, a titan in a tailored tuxedo. Not the broken old man Bradley had thrown into the rain 3 nights before. "Hello, Bradley," I said. "I believe you were just talking about us." I walked him through it in front of everyone, the affidavit he'd signed, the house he didn't own, the trust that actually held it, my trust. I introduced Marcus Sterling, who confirmed for the room that I was chairman of the company Bradley worked for. Bradley's knees gave out on the stairs. I dropped the eviction notice into his lap. Then I played the security footage, Bradley wiping his shoe on my wife's shoulder, slapping food from her hands, and forcing her to eat it off the floor, shoving her toward the basement, while Vanessa sipped wine and scrolled her phone without looking up. The room turned on him completely. Leonard stepped forward and detailed the debts I now owned. The Porsche, the credit cards, the personal loans, all seized. Marcus fired him on the spot for cause. Then the red and blue lights hit the driveway. FBI agents came through the door for wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy and elder abuse. Bradley tried to run. They tackled him on his own marble floor and dragged him out in handcuffs, screaming that he was family, that it was a misunderstanding. "I have no family in this room," I told him. Vanessa crawled to me on her hands and knees, mascara streaked down her face, begging me not to leave her with nothing. I looked at the woman who'd watched her mother starve to protect her lifestyle, and I handed her a business card for a cleaning service. "The trust is dissolved," I said. "You're on your own." I took Beatrice's hand, and we walked out past the wreckage of the life they'd built on other people's suffering. Bradley was sentenced to 15 years for fraud and elder abuse. He'll be 55 when he walks out with nothing, a felon nobody in finance will ever touch again. Vanessa avoided prison but not consequence. Months later, I drove past a discount grocery store in Queens and saw her behind the register in an ill-fitting smock, hair gone dark at the roots, being screamed at by a customer over an expired coupon. She dropped to her knees to wipe spilled milk off the floor, her sneakers soaking through, and for 1 second she looked up and saw me through the glass. I didn't wave. I didn't go in. I told the driver to move on. She was finally learning, dollar by dollar, the value of the dignity she'd sold so cheap. We sold the Greenwich estate 3 days after that party. I didn't want to set foot in it again. We bought a shingle-style house on a cliff in Maine instead. 4 bedrooms, creaky floors, a fireplace that smokes when the wind turns. No ballroom, no grand staircase. Just a soul. Now Beatrice kneels in the garden most mornings, planting hydrangeas, humming songs I haven't heard in years. The bruises are gone. The fog the drugs put in her mind is gone. She doesn't flinch at slammed doors anymore. She doesn't apologize for existing. We don't talk much about the trial, or the letters from prison Leonard burns before they ever reach us, or the daughter who no longer feels like mine. That wound scarred over. It doesn't bleed, but it's there. I've learned that a suit doesn't make a man honest, and a title doesn't make him a leader. Real power was never about the money. It was the ability to protect the one person who mattered most, even after everyone had already decided I was too small, too old, too simple to matter. They mistook my kindness for weakness, and my silence for stupidity. They forgot that the man driving the truck is the one who controls the momentum. I chose to burn it all down because they tried to break her spirit. For stealing money, I might have just walked away. For that, there was no forgiveness, only the cold, final correction of the truth. Every evening now, I sit beside Beatrice on our porch and watch the Atlantic turn gold, and I know exactly what winning looks like. It isn't a boardroom or a headline. It's a quiet kitchen table, a woman who laughs again, and the certainty that no one will ever hurt her like that again. My name is Clifford Dalton. I'm a truck driver. I'm a billionaire, and I'm the man who taught his family the true cost of greed. If you believe justice was finally served, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of truth and redemption. And tell me in the comments, would you have given Vanessa a second chance, or did she get exactly what she deserved? I'll see you in the next story.